Welcome, everybody. My name is Dan Vonsover from Fortimize. Today, we welcome our first guest to the Unexpected Journey series, Ofer Yardeni. In business, Ofer is the chairman, CEO of Stonehenge NYC, a multifamily owner-operator based in New York City. In Ofer's 25 years experience, he's completed over $4 billion of real estate transactions. Outside of work, Ofer is a husband, a philanthropist, a father, an art collector, a man of style, someone who brings people together. And for me personally, a mentor, an inspiration, and a major factor in my own personal career after working with him very closely at Stonehenge for about 6 years. Welcome, Ofer.
Thank you very much, Dan. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. And thank you very much for your nice and kind words.
So, Ofer, you're coming to us from New York City. What's going on in New York City right now, Ofer?
So it's a very interesting period right now in New York City. I think that if we are talking about all the events that we are experiencing during COVID, I have been in this business for 25 or 30 years. I saw many cycles, I saw many ups and downs, but I've never experienced what COVID-19 brought to us. We started to see a massive exodus on in our portfolio, and with the governor's rules that you cannot really inspect and show units, there was only one way. People were moving out, even with our technology.
I want to talk about technology for a second. You were a personal investor in technology. Stonehenge is a big investor in technology. You have a whole page on your website dedicated to technology. I want to talk a minute about Salesforce. Tell me about your journey with Salesforce, and really at the beginning, why'd you do it? Why did you invest in it?
I think that when we started to invest in technology, and why it was complicated or tough for people to understand, is that our occupancy was 98.9%. And here I am at occupancy of 98.9. The company is running wonderful, and we have control of the expenses. And the typical question that somebody will ask you, if it's not broken, why, what are you doing? Well, what are you trying to spend $2 million for technology to do what? And my motto is, if it's not broken, improve it. I I started with Salesforce almost 11 years ago. I didn't even know what Salesforce is doing, but I was, as CEO of the company, I was quite frustrated with the data that I was getting from my companies to tell us about the market. And I remember coming to my leasing team 11 years ago, 12 years ago, and I said, okay, I would like to know how many leases we signed today or this week. I would like to know, and if somebody that doesn't want to buy in, they can leave. And we, of course, introduced Salesforce. And there was some resistance. And after a while, the people who were not able to adapt had to leave the company. And the people who adopted and embraced it today cannot live without that. And during COVID, we were one of the few companies were able to sign leases online when the governor made a moratorium that you cannot go and inspect any buildings in New York, that real estate was not essential.
Yeah, Ofer, I'm not just saying this because you're our guest today, but Stonehenge really has been a pioneer when it comes to technology. I speak to real estate companies all the time about their technology, and Stonehenge is referenced because you do have a 360-degree view of the customer. Because I always say to companies, and I know that you've sort of been ahead of this, is that all we're really looking at is the data to make decisions, whether it's decisions around marketing, decisions around how you're going to do service requests and that sort of stuff, because you have a tangible asset at the end of the day. You have to fix a sink. You have to do something within the apartment. All that stuff is tangible, but you need the ability to look at numbers and identify trends. And a lot of times, I remember when I was working for you, there were so many trends and stuff that the numbers said that I never would have anticipated. I think I know because I'm sort of a quote unquote expert. I'm in the field. Leasing agents think they know because they have their ear to the street. But until you really look at the data, it starts telling you stuff that you perhaps never really knew or thought about. And that then changes decisions on how you go about your business, where you spend your marketing dollars and that sort of stuff. Um, and one thing I wanted to just mention as it relates to Stonehenge and technology, you guys, Stonehenge focused on the customer more than I think any company for a really long time. Now it's changing a bit, but I always say when you go on apartment companies' websites, what do you see? You see buildings, you see clubhouses, you see apartments. You don't see a person, you don't see a community, you don't see anything that makes a tenant say, "Oh, I want to live here. This speaks to me," because a building doesn't speak to people. Um, and if you go on Stonehenge's website, you guys are about the community, about the brands, about the people that are enjoying themselves, and sort of you're identifying a specific type of tenant that's going to fill your apartments. So that I don't really have a question here. It's more of I just want to give kudos to that vision because companies are now coming around to that. But it's been a very long time, and you guys were sort of ahead of the curve there.
So, as you said, and thank you very much, I love technology. So for me, when COVID hit, we were ready. We
Yep.
were shocked, but we were ready. Now, as a foreigner, as an immigrant, as a single that came to New York, I understand what's living here as alone. My feeling and my thoughts when I went into the multifamily, I wanted to create an atmosphere of home away from home.
You were born and raised in Israel, Ofer, just like my dad. Um, Describe the home that you grew up in.
So I grew up in a city called Bat Yam, that it's south of Tel Aviv, blue collar. It's almost like Queens to Manhattan, um, on the Mediterranean. And when I grew up, I thought that I was living in the most beautiful place in the world. I lived in an apartment building we had an apartment, 600 square feet. My brother, my father, and my mother lived there. We did not have a TV until the age of 17. We got our first car when I was 21. I think we got the first phone when I was 16. But I can tell you that I had the happiest childhood that a kid can have. I always said we didn't have anything, but we had everything.
Mm.
We had love, we had friendship, and I didn't feel that I missed anything. Every day we went to the beach, we spent times with friends, we ate outside, not necessarily in restaurant, but we ate outside in the garden. And I had the most loving, caring parents and friends.
Amazing. And like everyone in Israel, like my father, you served in the IDF, is Israeli
Yes.
Defense Force. I think starting at age 17. What comes to your mind when you think about that experience in the army?
So, like every other citizen in Israel, when you finish high school, usually at the age of 18, you go and you serve in the IDF. And my mother, she fought against the British and then in the army. And so we raised in a society where when we reach the age of 18, we serve our country, and it's a privilege. It's not something that we looked at, we don't want to do. We want to do. And most of us are trying to apply to the best unit, if it's a Navy SEAL or the Air Force. And for me, the Israeli army when I think about it now, was the best thing that happened to me in my life. Because one,
Mm.
The Israeli army is the melting pot of the Israeli society. You bring kids from every place in the country, from, from the north to the south, from the wealthiest family to the people that are living on food stamps. You become so connected, so responsible one to the other. And there's a lot of discipline that I got from the army. Disciplines like responsibility, accountability, understanding that my action do not affect just me, but affect my other people. Really like a machine in order to make sure that everybody is safe and you are paying a lot of attention to details when you're 18 years old because your actions are affecting others. So for me, um, the army was a huge turning point in my career, in my life, as I put me a lot of discipline at very young age.
When after the army did you come to the States? Was it immediately after?
No, so after the army, like most of the kids in Israel, I went to college. So I studied in Tel Aviv University. I was studying history
Uh-huh.
of and philosophy, and I was going to graduate, but the year before the graduation, uh, I was studying to one of my the test with a good friend of mine. Her name is Miri Chabas, and we were very, very good friends in the university. And during the test, she said to me, "You know what, Ofer? After the test, when it's over, I'm flying to America. You want to come with me?" Now, she was from a very wealthy family, and I was from a blue collar family, and I didn't have the money. And I said to her, "Miri, I don't have the money. I can't go to America." By the way, I was never overseas before that. So she said to me, "You have a motorcycle. Let's sell the motorcycle." I said to her, "What?" She said, "Yes, I will sell the motorcycle." So she went and sold me for me the motorcycle for I think $1,000. We bought a ticket and we came to America for a trip. And while I was with her in America, I watched the movie Animal House. And for me to be in the theater and seeing Jim Belushi and the fraternity, I said, wow, that's a college. That's
You were
something that
inspired.
I want to. I was inspired because we don't have that kind of activity in the universities in Israel. We are more mature and we
Wow.
are more grown up. So, of course, I looked at this movie and I thought that it would be great to go to college in the United States. And when I came back to Israel, I applied to some universities. I got accepted to NYU, and I came to America as it's almost like the movie, moving to America, not knowing really what to expect. I came to NYU to study my master and PhD in NYU, of which I was very, very excited because I figured that I'm going to come here for 2 or 3 years, fool around, have a great time, study, and then go back to Israel
Mhm.
and teach in the university history or philosophy and continue my life.
I know people always have plans. They say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, or loose plans. But what actually happened? How did you end up getting into the real estate industry?
So, one, I can tell you that I'm not one of those guys that have plans. I'm not one of those guys that put business plan and say what I will do next year, in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years. There was one time an article in the Israeli press where they called me, I'm like the Forrest Gump of the real estate industry because things just happened to me and I just follow what happened to me. So I came to the United States, I go to NYU and single guy. And every person that I meet when I go out for dinner or drinks in a bar were involved in real estate. Their parents were in real estate. They were in real estate. They were brokers. They were owners. They were financial guys. And I didn't know even what real estate means because in Israel, we didn't have real estate like rental apartment building the way we have in New York. Everybody owns their home, everybody
Ownership.
owns their retail, everybody owns a commercial. And the whole idea of renting was quite foreign for me. So there is no real estate industry in Israel, at least when I grew up. Things change now. So the girls, I was single, so the girls that I met were parents were in real estate, and some of them invited me to their homes, and I comes and I see mansions in Greenwich, Connecticut, or in Long Island, things that honestly I only saw in the movie. I never believed that those things exist. And I said to myself, real estate must be something very, very good. I looked at these people and I said, wow, they made a lot of money. So I started to take some courses of about real estate, and I was quite fascinated in NYU to study some real estate. And then I walked the streets of New York, and coming from Israel, where the tallest building was 6, 7 story, and to see the skyscrapers here, I was completely blown away. And I met a gentleman by Bruce Rotman, that was a broker at LBK. And he was a great salesman. And he said to me, Ofer, you can be a broker. Why don't you apply to LBK and become a broker? I said to him, I don't know anything about selling. He said, don't worry, you'll be good in that. I took the course for real estate brokerage, and I went to and I applied in 1987. I went to an interview with Liza Piri. She was a beautiful woman, and we really hit it off. Great interview, and she accepted me on the spot to become a salesman in LBK to sell real estate. And that's the story how it started, without any plans really and thoughts to go to the industry. The people that I met, the people that I interacted, they introduced me to real estate. I had passion, but I didn't know really what I was doing. I never felt like a fish out of water. New York City embraced me, and I embraced New York City. You know very well that almost everybody that lived in Manhattan was single. There is no true New Yorker. Everybody is almost like a foreigner here. Everybody comes to New York from every part of the world, not just the United States. And in fact, I can tell you, then I truly felt here at home. Yes, I know my home is in Israel. Yes, I know whenever I am in the airport going to Israel or I land, I almost cry when they sing the anthem. But I felt in New York immediately peace. I felt at home.
So when was the first experience of actually buying real estate, being an owner, and when did you realize, oh, I could actually make this a business?
So it started first to be as a broker before I was buying it. And I always said that the best school that I went was to the brokerage business. Because if you think about it, then as a broker, I was able to meet the best people in the real estate industry. I am really like a canvas of thousands of people that I met in my career, and I took their ideas, and I believe maybe I made it better. So opportunities came in the early 90s when I was on vacation. I met in Florida, in the Boca Raton Beach, I met Val Wagner, um, uh, a real estate investor that was living in Montreal, that had great relationship, or he was a partner with Caisse de Depot, Retirement Fund of Quebec. And I met him in the pool with my son and my wife, and he was with his wife.
Totally random? Did not know him?
Totally random. In fact, not me. My wife met his wife. And as you know, women in the pool with little kids. My son Max was 6 months old.
Right.
And they were talking about life in New York, and Monica was talking about life in Montreal, and they figured that they will go to dinner. We'll go to dinner together. But then my wife told her, "Listen, Monica, my husband is a foreigner. He's from Israel. I don't know if your husband will enjoy being with him." So Monica said, "My husband is from Israel too." So when Val came and we got together, Val was 17 years older than I am. When we started to talk, we realized that we were from the same town, from the same street. His building was adjacent to my building. And I used to really beat and torture his young brother every day. It was the most annoying. And for Val, it was something really unique and special because here I'm meeting him in Florida, and it was not not by coincidence. There is a reason for all this. And he
Wow.
invited me to Canada with my wife to meet the partners at Case de Depot.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was quite amazing. And I didn't know then who is Case de Depot. I
Right.
didn't know the money. So I I met I went to Canada with my wife and to meet the people at Case de Depot. And on Monday, I met the people from the case, and they explained to me about their vision and what they want to do and how they want to come to invest in New York. And they asked me if I would work with them. I couldn't believe what I was hearing because for me, that was the biggest opportunity somebody like that can get. And from 1994 until today, I'm happy to say that I am working and I'm in partnership with the people from Case de Depot. And when Jean-Claude Square was the chairman, we started, and today we are still doing business. And that relationship with Case de Depot in the early 90s gave me the boost and the strength to believe in myself and the power financially to go and to purchase buildings here in New York with their backing. So this is really all how it started, how I bought
Yeah.
my first building in New York.
So, Ofer, just listening to you now, selling your motorcycle to use money to come to New York City, getting introduced to Bruce, who then introduced you to the real estate world, and your wife becoming friends with Val's wife, and then you through their met your investor. Those are major fork in the road moments for you. Were there any other fork in the road moments that you want to highlight?
You're absolutely right. I didn't think that there are forks in the road. And again, I come to the idea that I didn't have a business plan. I more let myself flow. I let myself go. I'm one of those guys that I rather say yes than no. I'm one of those guys that like to explore opportunities than hold back. So yes, there are definitely, now that you ask me the questions about forks in the road, I had many, many forks in the road. One of them was in 1996, where I was able to convince Case de Depot to buy with me one of the largest transactions in Times Square, the Ritz Plaza. That's an apartment building that was developed by a great developer in New York that I stayed friends with him after that, Jason Cohen. And he built 500,000 square feet, 479 units, and had a loan of 151 million on the property. Unfortunately, in 1996, the project went into financial distress, and I was able to convince Case to support a guy from Israel, a guy that never managed any real estate, to buy that building for $77 million. So that acquisition, I think, was a fork in the road, if you put it, because one, it elevated me for many, many of the peers that are buying 5, 10, 20 million to suddenly buy something for 77 million. Second, mentally, it gave me the strength to believe that I can do it. I can play in this arena. And third, I created Stonehenge Management to manage the real estate. So that transaction clearly is a huge pivot in my life that helped me to think about myself in a different way. So on a business level, that was a fork in the road. On a personal level, a fork on the road, if we call it, was in 2013. Uh, I came back to the United States after visiting my son in Europe and watching a soccer game in England. I landed and I didn't feel so well. I had some pressure in my ear. So most of you don't know, but I'm a little bit health nut and very cautious. And I went to see the doctor because it didn't look to me quite normal. And my doctor, Gwen Corvin, uh, did a test and she saw that there is something quite weird in my throat. And she asked me to go to do an MRI, of which I really resisted because I'm afraid to go to the MRI machine. But she convinced me, she held my hand, she crossed the street with me, and I did it. And in a matter of 24 hours, my life was completely changed because I was diagnosed with cancer, throat cancer, stage 3.5 centimeters of size of a golf ball in my throat. And your first thought is, wow, I'm going to die. I had little kids. How will I face them? How will I face my wife? What will I tell them? How will I deal with it? So I think that for 24 hours, I didn't sleep. I didn't know what to do. And I'll never forget that my first conversation with my wife um, was a very emotional one.
Mhm.
And she hugged me and she kissed me and she said, everything will be okay. And I started the process of dealing with chemo and radiation in Sloan with Dr. Busing. And for a matter of 6 to 9 months, I realized the love and the support that I received in my life from the doctors, the nurses, unconditional love. These people had no idea who I am. These people, for them, I was a stranger, but they embraced me and they took care of me as I was their kid. And the love and the passion was amazing. And for my friends from all over the world, I received emails, letters, phone calls, text messages that I couldn't believe how much love there is in the world. And it reached the point that I was honestly crying every day that my wife decided to take the phone from me because I was not able to handle it. So I think that if you are asking me about the fork in the road, I think that was a major fork in the road on the personal level that gave me a completely different perspective about what kind of a person I am, what kind of a father, husband, a friend, leader, what kind of a person I want to be every day, what kind of a person I want to be remembered. And I became very, very conscious about my action, my words, and what I do every day. So I think that that was for me a major fork, as you put it, if there is fork in the roads.
Yeah, it seems like that was a moment, one of those moments that life just stops and your business and fundraising and acquisitions and management, everything just sort of stops in its tracks. And when you get this news, but the blessing in disguise is you start realizing how many people out there are pulling for you, how many love you, and how much support you actually have. And maybe you didn't have insight into that if you didn't have this diagnosis. Um,
You would think that then, but I want you to know that on the business level, and I think that I take it from the Israeli army experience, I always thought that I should surround myself with the best people around. If I have good teams around me, they will elevate me and my life would look better. So I was always proud with the team that I have, and I'll never forget that when I was sick, uh, when I was getting chemo, I used to have a visitor, Richard Dansaro, which is my dear friend, the person who I love the most. And Richard was really running the company when I was not there. And Richard was coming to the hospital while I was getting the chemo and updating me on everything that was going in the business and making sure that I knew that I can make and helping me to make decisions. In fact, we were able to structure a deal on the sale of the Olivia when I was in cancer. Richard did an amazing job and I owe him a lot in my life, but I think that the business continued to run.
mhm.
I don't want to say it ran better without me, but it continued to run. And it can again shows everybody that if you have the right people and you put the right discipline, things can go without you and you need to let go. And so from the business point of view, we were looking at deals and it continued. And it gave me a great lesson that not to hold anything, to let go. And people, if you have the right people, things will be taken care of.
So you wanted to hit the ground running, but you just physically and mentally weren't able to get back to where you were prior to the diagnosis. Um, and it took you some time to get back up to speed. And then once you were back better than ever.
Yes, it's true. And what happened to me, I came to this country as a student and then I started to work. And I always said that I never had a day off. I remember my parents coming to America, or my friends, they would go to Broadway shows, they went to see the Statue of Liberty, they went to see the Empire State Building roof deck. I can tell you, I can confess now that I've never been on the deck of the Empire State Building. I've never went to state at the Statue of Liberty. I didn't enjoy what the tourists are enjoying because I was under the program to work to build a company to provide wealth to everybody around me. And I looked at it that in essence, God gave me a second chance. God gave me a break, a well-deserved vacation that suddenly I took advantage of all the after cancer. And there was not even one street in Manhattan that I didn't walk. I spent hours on the street, uh, seeing this, walking, enjoying being a tourist. And I thank God for uh, putting me in that position that I can enjoy and embrace who I am and grow from it.
So Ofer, you had a 20 plus year partnership with Joel. Um, it ended after a lot of success. What are some of the lessons learned when you kind of sit back and reflect?
So with Joel, it was an amazing relationship. And again, it started when I was real estate broker that I sold one of the buildings that Joel owned, and we became very, very close business partners. And Joel was one of the best outside thinker that I know and I met in my life. Joel had no fear. Joel thought that everything is possible. And if we want it, we can have it. No limitation. And it was very important for me in the relationship because coming with no capital, never being able to rise to the level that financially that Joel had, I looked at him and I learned a lot of things from him to really, that the sky is the limit, that I can do it. So I was sourcing the deal, and I remember almost every deal that I came and I wanted to discuss with Joel. He always find the positive side in the transaction. There was never negative. There was not even 1 ounce of negative in Joel. And as much as he had limitations that he couldn't manage anything, because we used to have a joke in the office that Joel should wear a Velcro suit. Why Velcro? Because if you gave him a piece of paper, he lost it in the after a second. So if you wanted Joel to have something on him, you needed almost to stick it on him. But he was funny, hilarious. He was single during that time, so we were learning about his life. Um, he brought outside of the box idea that most of them did not work, but it didn't matter. The fact is that he was always with energy, and it was great to be around him at the early on in my career.
He set the tone for positivity, thinking creativity, saying, not saying no to deals. It sounds like he really set the tone of that, which you carried through with you.
He set the tone for that, but more than that, he had an ability in the early ons in the career to lead on the partnerships agreement. As you know, yes, we can underwrite a deal and close the deal and sign a deal. But when it came to partnerships agreement, I had a great relationship with all my partners, but sometimes because of my lack of English, and when I was reading the partnerships agreement, I used to get so annoyed at them, at the partnerships agreement, because if you read it, you sometimes you want to throw up. And Joel had an idea uh, to manage it and to really deal with it and not to take any issue personally. So I was young. Joel was older than I am. I used to get quite crazy when I read those agreements, but with his ability as an ambassador, he was able to put everything in the right perspective, and it sounded quite simply. So clearly, the growth of Stonehenge, uh, and I can say that maybe at the early years, Stonehenge did not grew fastest, not because of Joel, but because of me. Uh, Joel wanted to buy everything, and I was concerned because I was running also not only the deals, I was running the operation. And you know very well in real estate, it's different than the stock market. In the stock, you can buy billions of shares, doesn't affect your life. Real estate, every building that you buy, it's a life by itself. You need to manage it. As then I said, Joel had no idea about the management. He didn't even know where the buildings were. So I was uh, taking the burden of running the day to day. But I think that one of the lessons in a rising market, it's almost not important how you manage it. It's you need to move fast and buy because the market will correct any mistakes that you are going to have. But again, My personality is different, and you need to live with who you are, not who are other people.
Before we jump off of this, let me describe how I think you look at relationships and keep me honest, tell me if I'm wrong. And this is exactly like my dad, and perhaps a lot of it is with me too. It is really hard and takes a long time to get in the circle of trust. When you're there, you are there and you are there forever. If you are in there and there's some and something potentially happens to lose that trust, you get out of that circle of trust really, really quickly. Does that accurately describe how you look? Maybe not. That's
I,
sort of maybe my perception. I know that's for me and like my dad, but is that an accurate description?
I trust, as a human being, I trust people. And
Were you
I,
always like that?
I will always like that. I think it's also about instinct.
Hmm.
But as a human being, I'm a very trustworthy guy, and I give the credit to people. And I'm a very forgiving person. I don't hold grudge. Don't hold anger, because if I'm angry, the other person doesn't know I'm angry. So what's the point? Only I'm suffering. So I think that, the statement, "You fool me once, shame on me, shame on you. You fool me twice, shame on me." I think I've been fooled more than twice.
Hmm.
I'm not a guy that can tell you, "Oh, you can't fool me twice." Yes, absolutely, you can fool me, because I'm willing to take the risk of doing the right thing and getting maybe not the best return. I'm willing to give the people the credit. I live my life my way. When somebody is not acting in a good way towards me or my company, I don't take it personally. I don't go to sleep at night and I'm saying, this person doesn't like Ofer Yardeni. No, I look at it and say, this person has issues. It's not about me, because I believe that if he really knew me and if he really knew that he's dealing with me, he will be open, generous, and most of the time will agree with me. So that's how
I,
I look at things.
Ofer, thank you so much for doing this. It was a lot of fun. I hope you had fun. Can't thank you enough.
So then I want you to know that as much as it was fun for you, for me, it was an amazing.
Oh, good.
And the reason why I decided to do that is I know you for many years. And I remember when you started to work at Stonehenge and what kind of a person you were. And I saw how you evolved as a human being, getting married, having kids, a dog, living at 210 West 89 as my tenant, and working side by side with me for many years. And then one day you tell me you are leaving the company. And I was very happy for you when you left, as much as it was difficult for me, because I looked at it as, wow, how good is it for Dan? And for me to be today interviewed by you, it's like I'm closing a circle. And I really wanted to return to you all the good you did for me. And I'm so gracious and thankful that I'm your first interview, not your second, not your third, your first interview. So as we say in Hebrew, Akarat Tov, return of the good. I'm very thankful for you, for all the great things you did for me, and you will always be in my heart. And thank you for the opportunity. Thank you,
Amazing,
Dan.
Ofer. Right back at you. Thanks so much, Ofer.